Good evening, and welcome to our City Council work session this August the 26th, 2024. We're going to have our invocation led by Councilman Reeves, and right afterward we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would, please stand with me.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for your Son that died on that cross and shed that blood to save our souls, Father. And we ask you to just give us wisdom throughout this meeting, Father, that we would represent the citizens and take care of the business of the city that would be uplifting to you, Father. And all these things we ask in your name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Let's turn. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. We're going to set the agenda. I need a motion to set the agenda. Mr. Huff, Mr. Craig, all in favor? That motion passes. The consent agenda, we have one change on that. We're going to move number 2, the approval easement of Duke Energy as part of the dam stabilization project, to new business number 1. Are there any other changes? Okay, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Mr. Reeves and Mr. Craig, all in favor? Motion passes. Okay, we're going to go to presentations now. Number 1 on presentation is recognition of recent congressional achievements for Mount Holly. Mr. Blanton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm excited tonight to share some incredible news from our federal delegation in Washington. Congressman Jeff Jackson has secured a very large sum of funding for the city of Mount Holly. Wanted to invite his office to be here tonight so that we could share in that success. To date, we have been able to secure $1,105,800 for downtown water distribution improvements and an additional $1,105,800 for aerial sewer distribution improvements. So we have the district director for Congressman Jackson here tonight, Mr. Larkin Eagleson, and we want to certainly thank the Congressman's office for his attention to the needs that we have here in Mount Holly, and assure your office and the Congressman that those funds will be put to good use here in the city of Mount Holly. So Larkin, thank you for being here tonight, and please convey our sincerest of gratitude and thanks to Congressman Jackson.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Number 2 under presentation, Duke Energy to discuss the Riverbend Access recreational improvements. Mr. Jeff Lineberger.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Lineberger. I'm the General Manager of Water Strategy, Hydro Licensing, and Lake Services at Duke Energy. And I'm here to talk to you again. I think I came about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, to talk to you about an opportunity on Mountain Island Lake for our Riverbend access area. It's the most used public recreation area on Mountain Island Lake, and we've got some plans for it. I'm going to talk to you about those plans and then explain this leasing opportunity a little bit. Also talk about some conversations we've had with site neighbors and a 3-way partnership opportunity with the Wildlife Resources Commission. In the end, I am going to kind of lay out a timeline that we need to try to advance this conversation through in order for us to be able to complete construction on time. We sincerely mean that goal that's in the lower right-hand corner of this slide. What we're trying to do at the Riverbend access area should provide a much improved future state from the way things are now for users, neighbors, and for site partners. Okay, familiarize you again with the access area itself. There's about 68 acres there of Duke Energy owned property. Right now, the only developed facilities on the site are for public boat launching. So there is a paved parking lot there There's 4 single-lane concrete boat ramps, couple of courtesy docks, about 100 total parking spaces that are paved at where the launch ramps are there down in the along the lake's edge. And then there's a gravel overflow lot up above the trees up here where single cars can park. And since it's gravel, you know, it's not really an exact number of spaces, but about 30 cars can park there. It is the heaviest used public recreation area on the lake. It's one of your gateways to your city, as Highway 27 is, and also Interstate 85. But I think it's the one that catches your attention the most when you're coming from the east into the town, because the first thing you see when you cross that beautiful lake is Riverbend access area. Has good access off of Highway 16, and other public recreation needs beyond boat launching are obvious. All you have to do is go out there on a weekend in the summer. There's more going on there than launching boats, and those are some of the uses we're trying to accommodate. Back when we were relicensing the Catawba Watery project, which is the whole 11-lake system, we set up stakeholder teams and negotiated a relicensing agreement kind of as the region's vision for how we wanted the federal government to tell Duke Energy to operate the 11 lakes going forward. One of the most important components of that was public recreation. The words that you see quoted here are straight out of that comprehensive relicensing agreement for what would happen at the Riverbend access area. The important things there are that we, Duke Energy, would offer this access area to Mount Holly for lease, and to provide some public recreational opportunities. Your representative in that negotiation was David Kraus. He was the city manager at the time. He was very active in the one of the advisory groups that composed those overall stakeholder teams. And Gaston County was also involved. North Carolina Wildlife Resources was involved. All of those, including Duke Energy, are signatories to that relicensing agreement. It was an intense negotiation with over 300 public meetings, and most of those were all-day meetings. And that's where I got a whole lot of my gray hair. But the product was something that was very unique and special and important to this river basin. And it included a 20-year construction plan for Duke Energy to build a lot of new stuff, mainly to get at some of the activities that you didn't have to have a boat to do, okay? A lot of our recreation under the old license was really just focused on motorboating, because that was the thing that was important in the 1950s when this project was originally licensed. And as we know, people like to do a lot of other things now that are related to use of the lake, but you don't have to have a boat to do it. The leasing opportunity would be for a lease of this site through the end of the term of the license. The license expires in October of 2055. So we're talking about a long-term leasing opportunity. There would be no land charge related to that. What Duke Energy would get from that is the lessee's agreement to maintain the facilities that were there. Okay, you can't see the facilities very well on the slide, but I believe all of you have 11 by 17s of that same current site layout, and there's a large one on the easel over here. We'll be installing some facilities there, restrooms and fishing pier and some bank fishing opportunities. And then the swimming area will be the biggest thing that we plan to install. This will really kind of divide the site into two pieces. To the left is what's already there. It will continue to be the boat launching facilities. We will be replacing the courtesy docks. The boat ramps are in very good shape. They were replaced a few years ago. But we'll be replacing the courtesy docks. milling down the asphalt parking, repaving the parking, restriping that before we finish with the project. But the public that will continue to be able to use that boat launching area free of charge. But everything to the right on this plan is we're referring to as the day use area. And that's where all the swim beach will be, the fishing pier, bank fishing trail will be down here, and a restroom or a couple of restrooms, and utility building. There's will be a gatehouse up here at the entrance so that a lessee could control entrance into the site, including charging a reasonable and customary entrance fee to help offset the cost of managing the facilities itself. There will be a fence along the boat ramp area so that to get into the day use area, there will really be only one way to do that, and that will be to go through the gatehouse. So I think we have a pretty good basic plan here for what facilities would go here. We've added, for the point of discussion anyway, some picnic shelters and some dispersed picnic tables. Those really seem to work well with swimming areas and with bank fishing areas at some of our other locations. So if the site is leased, we would work with you guys on that. Site neighbors, when we came before last September, we had not really had these conversations yet. And that was one of the action items that we took away, that we needed to have conversations with our neighbors, and we absolutely understood that. We met with the Stormwater and Imagery Homeowners Association boards. You see the dates there early this year, and also with the church in the spring, and had good conversations with all three groups of folks. Primary concerns, the main thing seemed to be about the campground. And would there be a campground or would there not? And would there be a campground without on-site management, etc.? We don't have any plans at this time to construct a campground there. If you or another lessee wanted to construct a campground, we would work with you to do that. It's also possible the FERC could require us to put a campground on that site. They had given us no indication that they would require that outside of us proposing one. Overcrowding happens there now. Traffic issues happen there now because people are trying to get in there and use the land for things that it's not set up to be used for at present. So once we get these facilities built, there will be more parking for day use type activities, and there would also be some on-site control. And this is not unlike some other places that we have seen where lots of things were going on, facilities weren't there. Once we developed facilities and leased the site with on-site management, everybody was much happier. The site was safer, cleaner, and the crowding issues actually became less. So I think we've got good opportunities here to fix really all three of these things. And litter, that's a real challenge for us at that site, especially when people are getting over into the woods there and just leaving stuff behind where they had it. So I think with the day use area and the gated nature of that and a management fee to enter the site, most all of that litter issue is going to go away. The very bottom sub-bullet says gate to be added at the Woods Road to deter dumping of household trash. We have installed that gate and a fence there, and it has already shown improvements. There was a little place where you could pull off, and we found lots of bags of household garbage there. But that has been largely stopped now. There was also, when we came last time, there was some concern about how dark it is along Horseshoe Bend Beach Road out there, and people parking along the road, etc., in the dark, and then was it really safe? We've initiated a project to light that area, and it should be completed by the end of next week. So by September the 6th. Okay, planned construction schedule. We need to start this, the actual on-the-ground construction spring of next year in order to complete it by the fall of 2026, which is our target. We're going to try to keep that access area, the boat launching area, open as long in construction as we possibly can. Not only for the public, but also for first responders to have good access there. There will be some times when we have to close it, such as when we're tearing out the old courtesy docks and milling the parking lot down and repaving that. Obviously, it will have to be closed then. If we find that there are safety-related issues associated with the construction in the day use area, we may have to close the boat launching area at times then as well. But we will work with your local law enforcement and emergency responders to make sure that they can have access anytime they need it to respond to an emergency. We post all these. We have water alerts on our website and on this Lakeview mobile app where we post that the public can readily see which access areas are closed and why they are closed. All right, just a couple of pictures to show you some examples. This is the Molly Creek access area we built a couple of years ago down on Lake Wateree. You see the large swim beach that's there and the buoys that rope it off, and then there's another set of buoys out from that further warn boaters to slow down in that area. Very big boat ramp. All this was brand new. This was a green site before we started on it. Site gets a lot of use, and this one currently is not leased. We hope we will have a lessee soon, but right now we are managing the site with our contract crews. One important thing is we designed these swim beaches, the roped off area, so that the water depth is 5 feet or less, and by doing that you really don't have to have an on-site lifeguard, and that will be a similar design that we will use at Riverbank. We are planning to install vault toilets. You'll see those on an example of that on the left. This is at our South Point Swim Beach on Lake Wiley. Another swim beach we recently have completed, and that site is leased to Gaston County. It's a beautiful place. It gets lots of use, and the county really seems to be very happy with the arrangement that we have there. And an example of what one of these fishing piers looks like. With the decking surfaces there are composite material, so it should last a long time and handle a lot of wear and tear. And a couple of pictures of some picnic facilities up on Lake James at the Black Bear access area, which is leased to McDowell County. So we constructed all those facilities, finished them last year. Benefits of leasing for you all. Long-term land use at no related land costs, and then this three-way partnership with the Wildlife Resources Commission to continue to manage the boat ramp side of things. You all would be managing if you lease the site, you'd be managing the day use area and also the restroom facility on the boat launching side. Improved presence and management, we've discussed that. This is a quality of life issue, right? I mean, we've got a lot of folks that want to get on Mountain Island Lake, and they don't have a boat, and they're getting there the best way they can right now. What we will be doing here is providing facilities so that they can use that lake safely, and they can have some assurance that, where they're going, somebody is looking after the property. I mentioned the ability to charge user fees. Those would have to be as for, as the FERC says, reasonable and customary fees. And we would expect you to use those to offset your costs for managing the site or to reinvest in other public recreation facilities you may have that also provide access to the lake system. And Duke would need to approve the fee structure you propose. There would also be opportunities during the term of the lease to potentially add more public recreation facilities. You know, things change over time. People might want to do some different things now that are related to lake use that we haven't even thought of. So there would be some direct opportunities as the lessee to have an influence over that. And the timeline, so that we're able to start this construction in the spring. We're requesting that by October 1st, we could get a non-binding notice of, or a letter of intent from you all, just to let us know, are you intending to lease the site, or have you decided this is really not for Mount Holly? And again, this wouldn't bind you to anything, but we really need to know that, so we know, do we need to continue working with your staff to work out the details of the lease and hopefully have that lease signed by the end of this year, or do we need to go another direction with another lessee? So that's the timeline that we're looking at. I think that was it. I'll certainly try to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions for Mr. Lineberger? Mr. Huff?
Thank you for coming back. I appreciate you meeting with the residents up there. That was big, and taking the input that we provided over time. I know it was a while back, but that was very productive, and I appreciate that. There were a couple clarifying questions. You did address it in your presentation, but I just want to be sure we understand. Boat access, bringing a boat in 24 hours a day, is really not under the city's purview. If we're the leasee, it's under wildlife.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes,
okay. As far as the day use, when we say day, are we talking you can do it from dawn to dusk? Is that kind of how it's done, or set hours? We can certainly set hours for that.
Setting of hours, typically we would like to see dawn to dusk, but as part of the lease, it would have attached to it a operations plan that would include hours of operations. We would just need to agree on what those hours are. And, you know, typically it would be dawn to dusk. It would be like for the swim beach, obviously there's a swimming season. And outside of that, the swim beach would be closed. There would be a fence around it with a lockable gate, so you close that up. But the other facilities, if they're, you know, for bank fishing or for picnicking, the expectation would be that they would be available year-round, at least in daylight hours or most of the day. But we can work with you on what that schedule is. Like any good contract, we just need to agree on what the conditions are going to be.
Mr. Craig?
So, God forbid something happened, of course, but if City of Mount Holly takes on to be the lessee, would Gaston County take over if someone drowns in that water area within the buoy?
Gaston County take over.
And that could be a Chief Reagan question as well. Okay.
Yeah. And the Wildlife Resources Commission has an on-water presence as well.
Okay.
So, what we're really talking about here is like responding to somebody drowning.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Those agencies would respond to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Huff?
So, based on the location of where this is, it's primarily affecting our residents, not Gaston County residents. We've got Stonewater Bay, imagery. There are some county residents out there, but primarily the city's growth is to the north. Personally, I think for the city to have control of this area, make decisions based on this area and work with Duke is in the citizens' best interest. We did talk about earlier on some of the people here may not have been privy to the conversation of what the revenue would be based on usage that we saw, an average usage. We used between $5 and $8. Is that about right?
I think so, yes.
That's what we had discussed. And the revenue from that to offset the cost of managing the property. And again, it's just the day use area. The only concern that I continue to have is the passive restraint of signs not to trespass the Stonewater Bay. It continues to be an issue. Now people are dropping people off. They're walking through private neighborhoods. They're going through yards and getting on boats on people's private docks. Yeah. So that's something that obviously working with Chief Reagan and our safety personnel going to need to be addressed still. I think understanding that, but with the signs not having a fence, potentially in the future we may need to invest some of that money that we get from operations in a fence if it continues to be an issue, or come up with a better solution, maybe. But I think it would benefit our citizens to have a park given to us. We're not purchasing it. We're managing it to how we see fit, with a few cleanup responsibilities for the bathroom and some of the trash out there. But I think it's going to bring a presence up there that's desperately needed on a regular basis.
Mr. Lineberger, you mentioned about the lights, adding that lighting. Was it about 15 lights that they were going to add up that road up in there? I think with talking with.
Tammy, do you remember how many? We can find that out for you. Yes, sir.
Along with that, one of the big things I think is picnic shelters, and I know that can be part of our continued conversation. But I think that's a big thing that we need to look at up there. And can you talk a little bit about maintenance of the property?
Yes. Well, the maintenance would, and this is why it's really good to get involved in the discussion now. But we're going to design the grounds to try to minimize the maintenance, whether we're doing it or the city or some other lessee is doing it. So we will do everything we can to minimize the what you're going to have to take care of. We've learned some things from building these facilities other places. South Point on Lake Riley being one of those. We're going to incorporate those thoughts into the on-the-ground design. But it would typically be things like cutting grass. There will probably be some mulched areas that will need to be maintained, mulch resupplied later. Obviously, we're going to try to keep as many trees as we can. There'll be additional trees, decorative type trees planted. And the fishing pier should last a very long time. That material will be composite. It won't be natural wood, so that surface should last a long time. The swim beach, at some point in time, will need some more sand applied to it. But the hope there is that won't be something that is very frequently needed. It's not been frequently needed at the other beaches we've built so far. It's really a pretty, without a whole lot of moving mechanical equipment, it's really a pretty low maintenance burden site that we envision anyway.
Any other questions for Mr. Lineberger? Okay. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question? Does staff have any kind of direction on where to go from here? They're looking for something by October 1st. We have 2 meetings between now and October 1st. Is there anything that you may or staff may want to bring back to the council?
Yes, sir, Councilman Huff. What we can do at council's direction, if you are comfortable, we can review the information that was provided by Duke Energy today in regards to some of the questions that had been given to them by staff. We can look towards drafting that non-binding agreement that Duke referenced leading up to that October 1st deadline, and continue to have this on the council's agenda for the upcoming meetings in order to to provide additional input, tweak, and to have a draft before you all to consider, hopefully at the September work session, if that's agreeable to council.
That sound good for everyone? Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, next is a public hearing to consider entering into an installment contract for the purpose of acquiring real property owned by Dean N. Stroop Family Limited Partnership. Mr. Blanton.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. If the council will permit, I will make a short presentation prior to going into the public hearing, and then we can move forward with allowing the public to speak on this agreement, if that is agreeable to you all. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight we are here to discuss and conduct a public hearing to consider whether the city should enter into an installment finance agreement to purchase certain properties that are located on East Central Avenue here in Mount Holly. Before we go into the details of this particular purchase contract agreement, I want to take an opportunity to share a timeline of how we got where we currently are tonight and a little bit of history on the project to refresh council and, of course, to share this information with the public. After long negotiations in open session on February the 12th, the City Council voted to approve 2 contracts to purchase 120 Central Avenue and 120 through 140 East Central Avenue. It was split into 2 contracts with the Dean Stroop family. The first being that 120 East Central. That was 1 building, 1 contract, and then we had a separate contract to take care of 128 through 140 East Central Avenue. Following that vote of council, the staff continued to work to ensure that title insurance was secured, that these agreements were executed, and that earnest money was paid in the following days after the council's decision. As you can see on here, 120 East Central went under contract for $1 million, and then those remaining properties in that second contract, that being 128 through 140 East Central, went under contract for $2 million. So these are the properties in questions. I'm going to go to this next slide, and then I'll come back to this. What we're looking at to the left here, properties on East Central, starting at where Papa Sammy's is, going up through Dean Stroop Electric, all the way to that corner building through here. So I wanted to talk just briefly, because I've got a lot of questions in the past few days about these properties, such as why did the city want to purchase these properties? I discussed at length with this at the Mount Holly Matters, but I wanted to just recap a short portion of that. As you all know, Goal 3.3 of the city's strategic vision plan identified our residents as overwhelmingly wanting a desire to see the expansions of our Veterans Park downtown, wanted to look at the possibility of a splash pad, possibility of additional amenities to the downtown area, and then an amphitheater. So the underlying question that the city faced back in 2019 when this was adopted and leading into now is just exactly how does the city pay for these properties that we're talking about. So as you all know, the bond failed in 2021, and the city went back to the strategic vision plan to seek collaborative partnerships to fund this park and to encourage private sector partnership. The hope was that the city would be able to entice a third party private sector partner to exchange or sell land that the city owned in exchange for the private partner funding the park amenities. This, of course, was allowable under North Carolina General Statute 143-128. Similar partnerships have been undertaken with other municipalities across the state. So the city was working towards acquiring this property. That's how we got where we are now. By purchasing these properties, the city was hoping that we would be able to have our park expansions, increasing our downtown tax base by potentially millions, and then accomplishing numerous other tenets of the strategic vision plan. So the question before the council tonight is whether the city wishes to finance the purchase of these certain properties owned by the Stroops to further this objective. As it currently stands, as you can see, due diligence will end on September 2nd, 2024, with those original agreements that were entered into back in February. So tonight, we are looking at the possibility of financing these properties. This was an option that was presented to staff some months ago. It came to council at the August 12th meeting. We took this to them in closed session as an allowable exception, or as an allowable North Carolina General Statute closed session item. Council did not act on this. We did not enter into the financing agreement. The direction was given to staff was to evaluate this, to see if it was possible, to see what it would look like. So as I said, and I want to underscore that no action by the City Council in regard to this proposal was taken. We did not, and we are currently not in any type of financing agreement for these particular properties. So we began evaluating to see what this would look like. This would fall under North Carolina General Statute 160A-20. This would be a purchase to finance the purchase of real property through an installment contract. In order to do that, the general statutes provide that we have to advertise for 10 days and then have a public hearing, which is, of course, where we are tonight. On August 16th, we published a notice of a public hearing for the issuance of installment purchasing finance in the Gaston Gazette to meet those 10 days requirements, to bring to the public what we're looking at, and to give the public an opportunity to talk about this particular option and to give comment on it tonight. So I want to move forward to exactly what these options are. So we are looking at two potential options for financing these properties. Option one would be we pay $43,000 up front. This leaves us a balance of $3.1 million. We would finance these properties over a roughly 2-year period at a 6.5% interest rate. As you can see, that's the payment schedule under option one. Option two, and again, I would note that both of these options require the city to close by October 1st, 2024. Second option is the city pays $100,000 down, leaves us a balance of $3,043,000, and we would finance that at a 6.5% interest rate. These are the terms of the agreement that are before the public, the council tonight. There are certainly benefits and drawbacks to all of these. One of the benefits to these options include the possibility of attracting a private sector partner at the conclusion of the RFQ, which is set to expire in October, giving us the possibility of being able to pay off the note early if we were to enter into this purchase agreement, and this would prevent the city from expending $3 million up front, which is where we currently are. If we do not take action, if the council does not take action, we will continue under the original terms of those February agreements. So we are currently in the public hearing, or soon to be in the public hearing, with the vote of council. The council can take immediate action towards moving forward with pursuing these options to finance the property, or take action in the future if you so choose. In conclusion, I just want to reiterate several important points, because this is a unique concept, certainly not a new concept, something that's been utilized other places, but something that would be unique in nature to the city of Mount Holly. But first, I do want to underscore what I said a few minutes ago, that there's been no vote on this installment loan. That would not be able to be taken until such time that we have a public hearing. The city is not in any type of financing purchase agreement with any of these properties, or any of the properties downtown, or any of the properties that relate to the Veterans Park project. All properties that have been acquired by the city have been voted on in open session, all of which are reflected in the open session minutes of the council. All of these agreements are a matter of public information and are readily available for inspection. And lastly, as I previously stated, due diligence will close on these properties on September 2nd. And without any additional action by the council this evening or at a special meeting prior to next Monday, the city will move forward towards closing under the original terms of those February agreements, both of which I have on me here tonight. Glad to provide to anyone that would like to see those original agreements or any of the paperwork that is associated with this project. That is all I have as far as formal information background, Mr. Mayor, and would certainly look forward to answering any questions or concerns that we can when we enter into the public hearing.
Okay. I need a motion to go into public hearing. Ms. Harris, and second by Mr. Reeves. All in favor? We are now in our public hearing. We have our first person to sign up is Mr. Gary Brinkley. If you would come and state your name and address for the record, please.
Okay, my name is Gary Brinkley. I live at 176 Tom Sawyer Lane here in Mount Holly. I had not planned to talk tonight, but I wanted to make sure that no one thought I had changed my mind. I haven't. I still am not in favor of the downtown redevelopment, and this was an opportunity to talk about that. I'm still concerned about the risk. You know, really categorized into 3 areas: parking, potential crime, and impacts to Ida Rankin and Mount Holly Middle. And then I wonder if the amenities for the parks are the best way to spend our money. Spending over $3 million at a time when taxes and other costs are so high for such a risky project does not make sense to me. But council, you're responsible for making this decision. Are you really acting in the best interest of our current residents? Because we got to worry about the people that live here today, the people that pay taxes today. not the ones that might come next month, next year, 5 years from now. But today's residents are the ones should be our concern. That's who you represent. That's who voted you into office. So back to responsibility. You know, are we thinking about the students that suddenly have too many students in a classroom? We have no control over who's going to show up. You know, they might be all first graders. They might be all fifth graders. They may be a mixture, a blend. We don't know. Just because it's not under our control doesn't mean we should ignore that potential impact. So let's figure out what Mount Holly really needs and move ahead from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brinkley. Second sign-up person is Walter Giancola. Okay. All right. Okay, anything else while we're in public hearing? Okay. I'll need a motion to come out of our public hearing back into our regular motion. Ms. Harris, and second by Mr. Reeves. All in favor? We're back in our regular meeting. All right. Council wish to take action on this?
I had a couple of
Or
questions.
have comments?
And this could be either city attorney or city manager, just so to explain this concept of an RFQ, request for qualifications, being in October. You know, the issue here is whether or not we will have a partner that comes forward through the RFQ process. Let's take the other stance and say we don't, okay? So we enter into this agreement with the Stroops. We pay $43,000 versus it's $50,000 if we want to extend 6 months, okay? But if we do $43,000, which is a less expensive option, to extend the due diligence time frame, and we enter into this agreement, are we bound by this agreement if we decided, oh, we don't have a partner that's going to come in and pay for this land that we're putting under this agreement? So in other words, would the city be on the hook for that if we didn't find a partner? And I think that's important.
Ms. Anders?
Thank you. I'm happy to speak to that as a 12-year real estate attorney. So the contemplated options, if you move forward with the installment financing option, as Mr. Blanton relayed to you, were presented to city staff from the Stroop Family Limited Partnership, would be to close on the property by October 1st, which would be a purchase where the city of Mount Holly would receive a deed. And then in exchange would give a promissory note and a deed of trust, which is what you call a mortgage in the state of North Carolina. And at that point, the city would be following the terms of the note to either pay interest installments until the note matures, at which point would be required by law to pay that in full. Or if the city receives qualifications and wishes to enter into and actually enters into a partnership with a redeveloper, and then has a closing with that redeveloper, then the redeveloper would purchase the property from the city of Mount Holly, and at that closing, the note would be paid in full out of the proceeds of the sale, which is, I believe, the hope behind the seller financing option. The fact that if the city moves forward with this, the hope would be that the city would have site control through that deed. That's what would happen. The hope would be that the city would be able to find a partner through the RFQ process that would buy the property from the city without the city having to come up with that, $3+ million out of pocket, and would receive the proceeds from the purchase and sale and would apply that to pay that note balance at that time. So, that's a long-winded way to get to the answer to your question, which is that yes, the city would be would own the property and would be under obligation to follow the terms of the note, but would be allowed to pay it off early upon the sale of the property.
Anyone else? Mr. Reeves?
So simply saying if we enter in this agreement, we bought the property and we have to pay for it.
That's right. And the city, may I remind you, the city's already under contract
Right.
to purchase the property and buy it for the full amount of the purchase price at closing, unless the city council votes to rescind the contract before the due diligence expiration on September 2nd. What's different about the seller financing option is the ability to purchase it without coming up with all the funds at closing.
Anything else? Mr. Craig?
I'm definitely for moving forward with this because there's not just money that we're looking at today, it's money that's already been spent on the project. But also, of course, looking at it from a fiscally responsible way. I know the $50,000 to extend due diligence, I feel like might be the best option, just so we're not on the hook for the property if we don't get anything from the RFQ, even though it's $7,000 more than the option one of $43,000. I feel like that could be potentially the best way because I feel like the RFQ is going to bring something good other than the RFP, since the RFP was more strenuous on time and money for companies. So that's kind of my thought process.
Anyone else? Mr. Huff?
Just a clarifying question to make sure that we're correct in, the 6 months would start September 2nd for an extension. Am I correct in saying that we have the option of $50,000 for 6 months to extend?
Yes, and it would begin from September 2nd, which is the current expiration, would extend another 6 months.
And I would like to note that $50,000, if the council is willing to pay for that extension, would go towards the purchase price. It would be $50,000 towards that price.
Anyone else? Any other comments? Mr. Reeves?
So if we don't get a buyer at the end of that contract, that $50,000 goes to the owner, correct? It's a due diligence, is what I'm saying.
So if the city does not find a buyer before the additional 6 months expires, then the city still has the option to rescind the contract and not have to purchase the property. So it's the $50,000 would belong to the Stroop Family Limited Partnership. That due diligence fee would be non-refundable, but the city would not be required to purchase the property and would not own it, would not come up with the $3+ million.
Mr. Craig?
Yeah, just going back to what I said before, that's why I feel like it's the best option because, I mean, if nothing comes of that RFQ and we'd have to spend $3 million because we've bought and sold it, you know. So that's why I'm fine with that. I'd rather spend $50,000 and be optimistic about this than having to go in and spend $3 million and then.
I have one last thing. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
That's all right, Mr.
Um, So just to reiterate, I was reading the mission goals that we have hanging up, and number 2 is to create an opportunity for infill housing, which we've been trying for 20 years to do, to support our businesses, to be more inviting for visitors, and to give more opportunities for business growth. And that's what this can also contribute to, which was also in the citizen-involved vision plan of creating an expanded Veterans Park. So what you do in effect, if this were to go through and we get a good partner that pays for the land and helps pay for the park, and then we use some tax increment financing and other options to fund these things, then you're essentially killing 2 birds with 1 stone. I mean, you're giving yourself an opportunity to deliver what our citizens said they wanted, and when they were asked, these are the topics that came out. This is where, you know, the citizens said, hey, this is what we really would like to see. So the council's been working diligently on a plan, an alternative to, okay, we want to see it, we don't want to pay for it with bonds, how else can we do it? and this is a strategy to fulfill that. If it doesn't come to fruition, we go back to the drawing board. But I agree with Mr. Craig. I think the least risky, I'll use that word since it's been used tonight, would be $50,000 to extend 6 months. And then at that point in time, if we have more momentum, we should know by the end of, I would say by December, if we've got a partner that's going to work to develop that and bring this along. So I agree with you.
Ms. Shoemaker?
Yeah, and to be honest, I think I maybe missed something when we were discussing the increment financing before. I thought that also had a sort of, let's call it an escape clause to it. Or like, more like the situation with the 50,000. I thought if we paid the 43 that we would still, be able to, I guess I didn't really fully understand that we were buying it on site and that it was just a done deal. So I think that I'm with Councilman Craig and Councilman Huff that, I very much think that this is a project that is going to be beneficial to the downtown. I think it's beneficial to our taxpayers and the people that have expressed the interest in this park for a very long time. But I do like the less risky option of having that ability to say, we were all kind of blindsided when the RFP didn't get any bites. I was actually very surprised by that. So, given the amount of interest that had been expressed. So I would prefer to have this less risky option where if something goes wrong, we do, we don't necessarily, we're not on the hook for that $3 million if we don't have a partner to help pay for it. But I still think that the project in general is a good one, and continue to talk to people like every day that are telling me that they are interested in seeing this happen. So.
Yes, Ms. Anders?
Mayor, I did want to add one point for clarification purposes. So if the city council votes to extend for 50,000, 6 months, this contract, extend the due diligence period on this contract, then at the end of the expiration of the due diligence, a few weeks later, the closing would occur. And at that point, the city, and that would be late March, if I'm counting that correctly. At that point, the city would need to pay the full purchase price, $3+ million purchase price. And at that point, the city may have a partner that is selected, but may not have worked out all details, so may not have a simultaneous closing with that developer. And contrast with the installment financing, if you enter into that, you do go ahead and buy the property now, but you pay for it later, other than the interest. The point I wanted to add back to that is that the landowners have expressed that if the city extends for 50,000 for 6 months, the due diligence period now, then it would need to go ahead and close that upon the expiration of the due diligence period, and the seller would not be interested in doing seller financing later. They'd be willing to extend seller financing now.
Any other comments? Mr. Blanton, anything?
Just if there's any action the council wishes to take.
I got I
Mr.
was
Craig?
wanting to ask City Manager Blanton, can you explain again RFP and RFQ just for the public?
Sure. RFP is a very specific process that requires interested developers to expend a large sum of monies to put a very specific proposal together that is specific to the project. It's very time consuming, it's very expensive, and it's a bit of a gamble on the developer as to whether they're going to be selected. We had a pre-submittal meeting with several firms that were interested several months back in the RFP process. The feedback that we got was that it was very speculative, that they were not interested in expending these sums of money without some more certainty as to whether they would be selected. RFQ is different. It's more general, that you submit your application, you go through an interview cycle with the council, you put forth examples of previous projects that you've worked on, previous examples of similar things that you would like to showcase without tailoring it specifically for the project itself, that being the Veterans Park proposal. So where we currently are is we release the RFQ at council's direction after the August 12th meeting that is set to expire October the 11th. President, Planning Director Bill attended a pre-submittal meeting last week where several people were here asking questions, interested in going through that proposal. But in short, the RFQ is simpler for interested parties to submit for, essentially putting forth a resume for the city to review without getting into the weeds about what their specific proposal for this project would be.
Thank you.
Anything else? If not, would council like to take action on this? Mr. Craig?
I'd like to move to approve the $50,000 non-refundable due diligence money to Stroop to extend due diligence period to 6 months from September 2nd.
Second by Mr. Huff. All in favor? We've got Shoemaker, Craig, and Huff, and all opposed, Harris and Reeves. So it passes. All right, moving on. We're going to old business, discussion of the YMCA facility partnership. Mr. Blanton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Over the last few months, we have been exploring a partnership with the YMCA in regards to their capital campaign. They have done an incredible job raising large sums of money for their facility improvements that are going to be breaking ground just this week. We have been looking at the opportunity with partnering with them to build a full-size gymnasium. As council will recall, it wasn't until the August 12th meeting that we had actual numbers about what this would look like. This ranged anywhere from $6 million to $9 million, which was above what I believe the city and the Y were anticipating when it came to looking at this partnership. Spoke to the Y briefly after the presentation of those numbers and after those were presented to us. Council gave direction to look into this option, to dig a little deeper in, as it was fresh last meeting to see if this would be possible. And after reviewing these numbers, after talking to the Y, neither I nor staff am recommending to pursue this partnership at this time due to the high cost, unforeseen cost estimates that we had received. So certainly open to any comments, feedback, suggestions, or any different direction the council would like to take on this matter.
Any comments, Ms. Shoemaker?
I think more than anything, we were trying to be polite maybe when we, when we kicked the can down, but I have no interest in spending this kind of money. I think the original conversation was maybe $1-2 million.
Yeah.
That was something reasonable. This is a tremendous amount of money to have something that we don't own.
Any other? I think the council feels that way all along, and so thank you, Mr. Blanton, for that information. Number 2 on old business is a discussion from Raftilus, Ms. Elaine Vastus.
Good evening. We were here 2 weeks ago and we reviewed 2 options for the water and sewer rate structure. Both of those options would result in additional revenues of 12% for the water system and 6% for the sewer system. During that meeting, we had discussions about looking at alternatives for a rate for American and Eford, which currently has a sewer rate of $6.71. And we were asked to look at the possibility of having a lower rate since they are having to invest, I think, approximately $3 million to treat the sewer before it gets discharged into the conveyance system that eventually goes to Charlotte Water for treatment. So we looked at a rate of $5 per 1,000 gallons and a rate of $6 per 1,000 gallons. I hope you have this handout in front of you. I know this on the screen it's very small, but what we're looking at is if the American and Eford rate is at $6, that will mean that the increases for the sewer system, of course the water system are not impacted by this because we're discussing sewer only. So the sewer rate increases go from 6% to 8%. And then if we were looking at a $5 rate for American and Eford, that increase goes from what we have that's currently a 6% actually goes up to 9.5%. And so that is what we wanted to bring to you today, is to have you understand the impacts of having a rate for American and EFER that's, different than the current rate, and what that means in terms of the level of revenue recovery that's needed to make up that shortfall. And we did look at two different alternatives, and I'm happy to go through the impact under the different alternatives. The revenue recovery under both of the rate structures that we looked at is exactly the same. So the impacts are similar. It's just, if you'll recall, when we looked at the different rate structures, one is an across the board, which means almost all customers have a similar impact. And when we look at changing the rate structure, customers are going to have different impacts because we're changing the structure. And so, for example, when we say currently, there's a 6% increase on sewer, and across the board means almost all customers receive 6% increase. When we look at changing the rate structure, some customers may have a 6%, some may have almost double that because of the changes in the rate structure, but the overall revenue recovery is still the same. So I'm happy to go through those if we need to. I wasn't quite sure if you all wanted to talk more about the, just the overall impacts from looking at two different American and EFERD rates, or if you want to talk about the impacts under both rate structures too. So.
Ms. Shoemaker?
Just to clarify, so essentially, if you just tell me if I'm right on this,
Yes,
but like
sure.
if we are able to, if we choose to lower the rate on A&E, who is, a phenomenal partner to the city, an employer, and everything else, by $2, it only impacts our customers on average by $1.29 per month.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. you're
And
looking
if
at
we
that
chose
right.
to lower it by, but to the $6, the lesser, it's like 76 cents per month, right?
Yes.
This is a pretty nominal impact to the, because I'm assuming this is, just mathematically for people at home who aren't math geniuses such as yourself. Essentially, you have one customer paying a tremendous amount of money, you knock that off slightly, and you disperse that amongst thousands. So this is in the pocket of, coming out of the pocket of American and EFERD would be thousands and thousands of dollars a month, but to every individual home, it's $1.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Just
Yes.
wanted to clarify
No, you're
that.
looking at that correctly.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes, that's right. We're looking at taking those costs and spreading them over, the rest of or your, sewer customer base. So that's correct.
Mr. Reeves?
Question. What does it look like? I know we're trying to help out a company here. What does it look like if we just help the company out and we don't shoulder this on the back of our citizens? How does that look as far as revenue? Have we looked at that? Because I don't have a problem with helping a company out, but I have a problem with shouldering it on our citizens, like that. I realize what she said, it's only $1 or $2, but we're still adding more expense to our citizens. And I just, what does that look like if we just lower their rate, American EFERD's rate, and don't put it to our citizens?
Then we're looking at drawing down the fund balance, and then also looking at, as in the future, if you're looking at funding the capital improvement plan, being able to meet that debt service coverage. So we could either look at, would the city be willing to have a lower fund balance, and what are the implications of that? And that would add up quickly over time under the $5, let me start with the $6 scenario. You're looking at about, $175,000 per year. And under the $5, I think it's closer to maybe like $350,000 per year. So that's how much the fund balance would be drawn down each year into the future. So that's why we didn't, look at that scenario, because it has additional implications.
Ms. Shoemaker?
I think one thing that's really important to remember here is that all of the money the city has is the taxpayers' dollars. like everything that we have that we're talking about allocating. I think I think Mr. Brinkley is keenly aware that all of the money that we have is taxpayer dollars. So if we chose to run our water and sewer program at a deficit, we'd be subsidizing it out of taxpayer dollars. So that money has to be made up somehow. Like you can't give like somebody a discount and just be like, hey, we're just gonna operate at a loss for the next 10 years. I mean, the money that is there to do all of the capital projects and things that we have to do for the sewer and water out of the enterprise fund would be depleted, giving a discount to a corporate partner. So I mean, it sounds like not a lot because it's $1 per household, but when you put it on one lump sum, it's probably an enormous. I don't know what would it come out to if it's. We don't have like a number here that's like what would they be? I mean, it's obviously very approximate, but like what would they be charged monthly? You don't know that. That's a crazy question.
No, I'm sorry, I don't. Yeah.
Can't you do that math in your head? Sorry. But I just think like that money has to come from someplace. So you're either choosing to use the taxpayer dollars to subsidize that amount of money so they aren't seeing it, which I feel like is not transparent and is very false. And it's, something that we've chosen to do in other places with like trash pickup and things like that. But I feel like artificially lowering the numbers to make people happy, but it's still coming out of their pocket, so.
Mr. Huff?
Just a couple of observations, maybe looking at it from a slightly different angle. Currently, our second largest user is American and Eford and pays a higher rate than anybody, any of our citizens, all right? And for years, they have subsidized all of us by paying more than what we have paid in order for our rates to stay where they have been. Now, let's consider the opportunity that they're spending $3 million to treat their effluent. We don't ask anybody else to do that. They're being asked to do that because we're going to have to put the effluent in a specific way based on state statutes, that we have to treat this a certain way. So that by no means was American and Eford's responsibility at the time. We didn't know it. And now they're having to treat this effluent before it goes out and pay more than anybody else and employ 1,500 people and pay the majority of the property tax that offsets the property tax that we pay. So I think you have to look at it in context. We went head over heels to keep National Gypsum, and rightly so. What did we have to do to get 120 employees to stay? Not 1,500, 120 to make a $90 million investment. We had to grade out their property tax for the next 15 years. How hard would it be to recruit another company that employs 1,500 people? It is much easier to work with our corporate citizens that employ our people, pay the most of the cost, take the risk, and help them do that. And I think if we went to $6, it would recoup in 9 years. Is that correct?
I believe so. Not $5.
$5. So if we go to $5, they recoup the cost for investing in this that they're required to do because of state mandate, and that's added cost for them as a business to stay in business. We all take for granted that businesses can just print money and stay in business, just, $3 million. They're a big company, they can do it. I think we're being short-sighted if we think that way. Not in this day and time. It's tough. So I just think we need to look at that.
Ms. Shoemaker?
I would also point out that what Councilman Huff just said, they're our second biggest user. Like, what did we just do for our first? Like,
Stanley.
Yeah, bending over backwards and
Right.
lowered their rate lower than the residential rate. So why would we do that? Is it just because they're a company instead of a community nearby? I mean, but in the same context, 1,500 jobs. I realize not every single one of those jobs is somebody that lives in Mount Holly, but it's 1,500 jobs in this region that they could easily move someplace else if, I'm not saying that they would, and they haven't threatened that, but why wouldn't we try to incentivize a company and reward them for being a good corporate partner to the city of Mount Holly all these years? So.
Yeah, A&E has been in Mount Holly and in Gaston County for over 130 years. And we're sitting in one of the buildings that they built. And they're just part of us. And, you know, my great-grandfather worked for them, you know, for over 30 years, you know, when I was real young. So we've got to look to do something to help them out, to make things better, to work together and partner with them. I just think it's the right thing to do. All right. Anything else? Any other comments?
I just have a question. Where do we go from here?
Mr. Blanton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Huff. What we can do is we can bring back to council a proposed fee schedule incorporating the feedback from Raftellus with the rate structures that we talked about based on the input for A&E and based on the input that we have heard here tonight and that was provided by Raftellus back to the council for consideration and input moving towards adoption prior to putting any revised rate increases into place. So we can gear up to bring that back to council next month, a proposed draft fee schedule.
Thank you.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is going to be the Duke easement, the dam stabilization project.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before you tonight, council has a draft easement from Duke Energy regarding an easement that they have requested. They provided this to the city for review. The city attorney and I have both reviewed. Ms. Sanders provided feedback last week to Duke, which was forwarded on. Before you tonight, it is essentially an easement that is going to give Duke access across our property to make repairs to a dam that was built in 1923, concerns regarding safety and concerns regarding immediate action that needs to be taken regarding that dam. Wanted to pull this off of consent tonight to give council an opportunity to talk about it, to give Ms. Sanders an opportunity to talk about it, to see how in-depth the council would like to see this easement to be, to see if there are any questions, concerns, or discussions surrounding this easement that is before you tonight, Mr. Mayor. So Ms. Sanders and I would be glad to answer any questions that we may, or Marie, if you had anything.
Ms. Sanders, do you have anything?
So this is the property at 400 Mountain Island Road, which the city of Mount Holly actually purchased from Duke in 2007. At that time, Duke reserved several easements for itself for transmission line purposes. They're seeking an additional easement that would actually result in a new line being run that would be a lot shorter in length than if they use their current easements to run an additional line that they need. Mr. Blanton can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Duke representatives said that that this would replace some generators that they're having to use in an emergency during this dam stabilization project. And so from Duke's perspective, there's a certain amount of urgency behind this request. They submitted a map with from the tax office showing the proposed underground secondary voltage line that would remove around 2-3 inch undergrowth trees, but would not affect the canopy in any way. And some Duke representatives stated that they believed that the single underground line would be used for approximately 3 years and then would most likely be discontinued from service. That being said, the easement before you that Duke forwarded for your consideration is a broad blanket standard easement without any sort of exhibit attached to show a final location. It would be the final location, the easement area would be wherever they believed that it would need to go after working in the field. And they said that they would work with city staff representatives as well. The easement is broader than what Duke expressed that they would need. It is permanent in nature. It states that they would have the right to place permanent overhead facilities 30 feet in width and permanent underground facilities 20 feet in width, and would have the right to place enclosures, transformers, vaults, and manholes, and have a 10-foot easement around all sides of any foundation. And together with other rights that they typically have, like the right to cut and trim undergrowth and vegetation and things of that nature. So the Mr. Blanton, the city manager, contacted Duke and asked, hey, since you need this on a temporary basis, can you change this to a temporary easement instead? They expressed that really they would prefer to stick to their standard easement, which is permanent, and has this blanket information rather than narrowing it down to what they think they will actually use, and that they would just work with city staff in the field when actually placing it. So wanted to bring the easement that Duke requested before you and allow you the opportunity to approve, reject, or ask for any further information if you wish.
Any questions for Ms. Anders? Ms. Shoemaker?
What's the impact here to the trails and the park? And I mean, if it's a permanent easement, like I was thinking maybe it's just a construction easement, but since it's permanent in nature, like what's the impact to the infrastructure? Well, we'll call it infrastructure, but you know, like people put a lot of time and energy into the trails and the bike trails and everything else up there.
So, Mr. Blanton may have further information from staff on that. The easement as written makes it unclear what the impact would be, and Duke's representatives have asked us to kind of take it on faith that they would not use the full easement the way it's written. The way it's written could have pretty heavy impacts. Mm-hmm. So Mr. Blanton may have further information directly from Duke's staff as to what they intend to do with the easement.
And as Ms. Sanders said, it could potentially have future impact, is my understanding. I do not believe that it would affect anything that is currently in place based on the conversations that Duke and I have had without an exhibit, as Ms. Sanders referenced. Cannot say for certain, but it was my understanding that there would be no immediate impacted land that is being utilized by the city currently. The city, of course, owns this, but it's a wooded area, is my understanding. It's not currently being utilized.
Any other comments? Mr. Huff?
I think it's in Duke's best interest to treat this in good faith. They're not going to go in and do something, and they're a known entity. We've worked with Duke. Duke works with every community in this state. They're as concerned about access to the river as anyone, because they're held to that standard federally. And I think that, yes, I understand it's boilerplate. Yes, I understand it's standard. But in my estimation, you know, they're building they built a dam in 1923, and they're going to replace it, and they're going to leave it better than they found it. So I think it's to the benefit of the city that we go ahead and approve the easement.
Any other comments? Would council like to take action?
I'll make a motion we approve the easement with Duke Energy.
Okay. Mr. Huff makes the motion, second by Mr. Reeves. All in favor? The motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask for a 5-minute break?
Yes, we'll take a 5-minute break.
If not, I'm just going to leave in the middle of things.
I don't know what happened to my computer. I can't get it to.
Yeah, if you don't mind. That'd be great. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. There we go. Magic.
Took a minute. Okay. No, I think I'm good. 7:48.
Good to see you. I don't want to smoke.
You did not get your wish. Short second.
Oh.
He said, I hope we get a short second. We don't. I'm only good for an hour. No.
That's my favorite.
We only have
All right, I got a lot of paper.
We only have 2 things in closed session, so we might.
We need to get together on your license. We're gonna run out of time.
We're not. It's not even September yet. You're stressing me out.
Well, it's just me. I'll be gone the whole month of November almost.
Josh,
Oh,
you're
are
up
you?
next.
Yeah, I have
You're up
to,
next.
actually.
I'm not trying to stress you
No,
out,
no,
I'm
no,
just telling
I'm
you.
just kidding. I'm just teasing you. I have to figure out what I'm doing, because
Okay.
I have to see.
Once you do,
in
just
the
let me
past-
know.
Yeah, in the past, I've just ridden with, like, Jeff and I have gone together and done it, so it's like no big deal. So I didn't really have to worry that much about it, but I might need to talk to him about it, because if we're gonna run those, the snow machines out of there, then we need to.
You just let me know, and I'll get the stuff together, what you're gonna need, and
Okay.
let you know what you're gonna need.
Yeah.
Because
Okay, yeah.
here's what's going on with some of this stuff. I looked at an inverter the other day.
Yeah.
All of them back ordered for some reason.
Oh,
So
okay.
there must be some kind of chip or something in there that is went on back order.
Yeah.
The one I found wouldn't have done us any good.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so
Let me talk to Jeff next time.
Well, was there an
So, I mean,
explosion down there?
the sooner the better that I can get you a plan.
Because last year.
Well, I mean, I heard it, but they said it was at the end of Cavan and Dunn
That's
Street.
why I was kind of scrambling last minute, checking.
Right.
We'll be gone November
Right, right.
1st
Yeah.
to the
But
9th.
honestly, as nice as that little convertible was, like, I missed like having the kids
Yeah,
ride
I
with
mean, it's-
us and like.
You know, somebody said it was a homemade bomb. Of course, you
in
hear
the
all
big
this
truck.
stuff.
I mean, and the kids walk around,
But they, all I
like,
saw
and
that
they
was
all-
it
they
said,
always
it
walk
mentioned
around. They walk around the
Cavan at the end of Cavan Avenue and Dunn Street.
You know, walking over and giving the kids candy. That was
Anyway,
great.
well,
Yeah.
thing.
good.
I really liked it.
Yeah.
I've done that
And then
every-
That's
let me
good.
know
We've done it every
if
year,
we're gonna do that
but
Somewhere
again.
else.
I'll make sure we don't.
Hope
run
he'll
out of
stay there for
candy.
long.
Candy.
Man, I spent probably $150 on candy.
Did a guy call
We're
you
still
about
brand
noise
new.
ordinance
The
today?
problem is that I was like, listen.
He lives in
I'm not trying to be
Runnymede.
stingy, but
His
you can't
neighbors
hand
were having
out
some
like
like
10
give him the whole
pizzas to
bag.
every kid. And
Directly
so it
behind
was
him, and all
it
this
was like,
music
you
was
gotta
going
like,
straight to
I'm
his
watching
house.
girls go over and like.
But I
two
gave
of
him
them
your
give one
name and
kid
number.
sing people. I'm like, I love it, but there's lots of other people giving out candy too. So, but yeah, I think I might just have to cough up a little bit. You know, when
Right.
we've ridden with Jeff in the past, like
Yeah, sure. Is it 7 to 11 or 7 to
20
10?
pounds worth of candy that hard? 20
Well,
pounds?
I'm gonna go ahead and get what we
Part of
don't,
it was we were walking.
7 a.m. to 11 p.m., yeah.
whatever we don't use.
Yeah, and that's what I told him. He thought
I'm
it
gonna
was
bring them back.
10 p.m.
It's full of candy.
Yeah,
You know,
Right,
yeah.
actually,
Sure,
put that
right.
out there. Because we do,
right, right.
the parade is the week after the toy run, so I'll have that. So I'm gonna ask if I can take that. We have 500 bags left over. Each bag's got about probably half a pound, 3/4 pound of candy in it.
All right, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Yes, sir. Well, I was looking at
I'm gonna try to,
all
I'm
this
gonna try to
stuff on
spark
there.
that
Do
up.
I need to do it, or we just need to get through this, or?
Well, I was thinking about doing it after Paul Lowe, so we didn't necessarily have to keep him, but
I need to talk to
the more I looked at it, I'm like, ugh.
you giant trick. I'll talk to your giant trick guy.
All right. We missed me.
I'm gonna steal your guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's cool.
Man, these chairs don't want to move.
That's not okay.
I know, right? I don't know if you.
All right, you ready?
We're on.
We are at Paul, Josh Blackwell, number 2 on new business.
Where we at?
All right, we're going to reconvene here. Let's, I'm in the chambers here, right? We're going to start with new business number 2, review, consider, and provide feedback concerning a draft ordinance to regulate diseased and dying trees. Mr. Josh Blackwell.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You have in your packet a draft ordinance that would codify the abatement of dead, dangerous, and diseased trees. If a final draft of this ordinance is approved, in the future, it would go into the city code of laws and give code enforcement the ability to order property owners to remove, clear, treat dead, dangerous, and diseased trees on their property and that are on their property that hang into public spaces and obscure things like street signs and traffic, coming down the road. I think this would be a great ordinance, but tonight I'm looking for any comments that you may have upon review of this ordinance so that we can finalize it and have the city attorney go over it and come back to you with a potential new final ordinance for your review and approval. And if you have any questions, I'll answer those.
Any questions for Mr. Blackwell? Anyone? No?
I think it's
Craig?
a great thing.
All right, so do you need some direction, or are you just going to get back with our city attorney and look over that, and then you'll get back with us on that?
I'll get back with the city attorney and we'll come back to you with a final
Very
draft.
dangerous.
Thank you very much.
It's very dangerous.
It is.
Is it in the packet? No, I saw the pictures of the dead trees, but
Right.
the packet, there's like supposed to be the text amendment.
There's a text amendment.
Mine doesn't have it.
Okay.
It's in
Mine
there.
goes straight to the ADU.
I
It
forget
doesn't
exactly
have
what
it
was
in there.
at, but it's in there.
Does everybody else have a copy of the draft ordinance? I'll give you mine, Lauren.
Oh, fantastic. I'd love to read it. I mean, and maybe I can just chat with you afterwards.
It is
Um,
accessory.
Or I'll just call you on it. You don't have to stay.
It's
till
in
after
there,
closed
isn't it?
session.
It's in there somewhere. I saw
It
it.
got lost in the next one because it's so long.
Yeah.
Thank you,
It's
Mr.
in there.
Blackwell.
Yeah.
Thank you,
All
Paul.
right, number 3, review and provide comment on a draft ordinance which would permit accessory dwelling units in the city. Mr. Lowe.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So again, this is another proposed ordinance. We're just looking for feedback on the ordinance. So at this moment, we've been getting a lot of interest in accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. So ADUs are, one, they give people more function and use of the property, but also allow people to care for, elder folks, or just have more options to use their land. It would impact, again, we're just looking for feedback, but it would impact 3 parts of the ordinance: Chapter 3 for definitions, Chapter 6 for table of permitted uses. At this moment, we're only looking for it to be in residential districts, everything but multifamily. We looked at multifamily, but as there's no standard district size for multifamily, it makes it more tedious and doesn't provide a lot of options for staff to regulate. So, and that's why, RS8, RS12, there's base standards. So that is, and also we haven't received any input or feedback from folks in multifamily units to allow it or permit it. So, and then also Chapter 7, that would be the regulations for the ADUs. So going through that real quickly. So you would only have one ADU per property. So, and also as a compromise between folks that are proponents of ADUs and for trying to protect neighborhoods, we would say that ADUs cannot be used for rentals. Also, we checked with utilities, and detached ADUs would require metering or additional metering. Attached ADUs would require or could use the meter on site. So, and also in your ordinance, or the proposed ordinance, we were looking for parking at 4 spaces for detached and 3 for attached. But we want to clarify and say that potentially we would just have 2 for that would be associated with the detached, and then 1 for the attached. And then other standards that would just be general to the use would be, they would have to be permitted, they would have to be addressed by the county, and then as it relates to size for the detached, they would be up to, a minimum of 300 square feet, and attached a minimum of 250 square feet. So, and then how we get to the size is it would be 25% of the gross floor space for the attached home, for the attached ADU, and then for the detached it's up to 50%. So if you had a 1,000 square foot home, you could have a 500 square foot ADU, or if you had a 1,000 foot home, again, you could have a 250 foot attached ADU. So again, that kind of just goes over some of the general specifications of the ordinance, and again, we're just looking for feedback. And so if we receive any feedback, we can bring that forward at a later date.
Any questions? Mr. Huff?
How do you determine the parking? I'm gonna give you an example. I have a driveway and I've got a little parking area, right? And I build an ADU, and that's for people watching from home. That's called an accessory dwelling unit. So that's what an ADU means, so it'd be good to know. But how would I determine that if I build one in my backyard, for instance?
All right, cool. So, so the parking would, so this, again, it would have to be permitted through the city and also the county. So when the zoning permit would come through, you would show like any other plot plan that would come through, we would just need designated parking spaces. So, and basically, this is kind of, it's kind of a different situation, but it's kind of like the bed and breakfasts that we're kind of Airbnbs that we're having a little bit of some trouble with in the past. So this is saying we're trying to add a use and also mitigate potential impacts. So, but basically, they just have to be provided parking spaces. So that can be like in a garage or in, just some kind of parking spaces that would be provided on the plot plan when it would come into our office to review.
Anyone else? This is mainly Mr. Craig.
What other cities in Gaston County already have this in place?
Well, the county, they help review our ordinance. The county has one in place. I didn't really look, I'm not trying to be unhelpful, I didn't really look at Gaston County. I know, Raleigh, Guilford County, other places throughout the state does have something similar that what we're proposing. Like, for example, like the 25-foot maximum for attached ADUs or accessory dwelling units is typical. The same thing with the up to 50% for the detached is also typical. So what we're proposing is very much in line with what other folks are proposing across the state. And again, while we're trying to have the parking on the property, it's just to mitigate any potential issues from, in providing this use. So we want to provide this use, but we also want to just make sure that we're looking after the folks in the local neighborhoods and residents of the city.
All right, so this is just an ordinance, and you wanted some feedback and a little bit more direction, but this is something that we will look at a little later on and approve at a later date, right?
Yes, sir.
Mainly for information.
Right, basically.
Any other comment? Okay. Mr. Craig?
Real quick, so would there be, I know it's one per something, I don't know exactly where it is, but if you have like 2 acres or something like that, does that change anything?
No, but I'm not trying to be unhelpful on that one. So it's only like one accessory dwelling unit per property, but because our lot widths are so, more reasonable than, 8,000 or 12,000 square feet. So if you did have 2 acres, you potentially could subdivide a property out to have, but then you would have to have principal and accessory, and it would have to be under the same ownership.
Okay.
But at this point in time, I mean, that might be some feedback that we can look at, but at this point, we're just one accessory dwelling unit per property or per lot.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
All right. Is that it? Thank you, Mr. Lowe.
No problem, thank you.
Number 4 on new business, discussion of the RFP for construction of the South Gateway Connector Road. Mr. Blanton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am excited to talk about this project tonight. For quite some time, years now, the city has been attempting to build the South Gateway Connector Road. For those of you that may be watching at home or here in the audience that isn't familiar with this project, this is essentially building a road from Caldwell Drive to YMCA Drive behind the Fairfield Inn, and which will connect those 2 roads, which will facilitate much needed relief to the 300 apartments that have been built at the Banks, and which will also the Banks apartment down behind the Fairfield Inn, and it will also provide for an additional relief to those 200 apartments that are going to be built beside the Y. The city has been working very diligently, like I said, for some time now to get the necessary easements in order to move forward with these projects. Those have been secured. We have the designs ready to move forward with letting this project. It's going to be let in 2 phases. The first phase will help ensure that the apartments, townhomes that I spoke of behind the beside the Y are able to get a jump start on their project while we continue to work towards getting a bridge built based on direction given from Colonial Pipeline on the Caldwell side of this project. So before the council tonight is the RFP for this project. I wanted to give it to all of you to review, to provide any input, any type of additions, deletions, or comments that you would like to interject. We are prepared to move forward with releasing this in the next couple of weeks and hopefully moving towards getting those bids and having those back before the council for consideration and approval later this year. We are very much looking forward to this project, and certainly would note that upon the conclusion, the council did vote previously to name this after our longtime city attorney, Kemp Michael, upon the completion of this roadway. So looking forward to seeing this project come to fruition, and we'll certainly defer to any questions council may have. Mr. Mayor.
Any questions for Mr. Blanton?
I'd like
yes,
to
Ms. Shoemaker.
move approval.
Move approval. I have a motion to move approval, second by Mr. Huff. All in favor? Okay, we're moving forward with that as a unanimous vote. All right. Moving on. Okay. Number 5, discussion of the Tourism Development Authority bylaws. Mr. Blanton.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to speak briefly to the Tourism Development Authority. Currently, this is referred to as the TDA Board. They are tasked with overseeing the sales taxes, the monies that come in due to tourism, primarily the 2 hotels that we have here in the city of Mount Holly. They have a set budget based on the money that is generated from those hotels. By law, we are required to have board members. Currently, we have 3 board members, 2 of which currently do not meet the requirements that is laid out in the ordinance for the creation of the TDA. I am seeking direction from council if you would be comfortable with coming before you at the September 9th meeting with a revised ordinance which provides for additional members to that particular board, with the hope that we will also have potential applicants that may be interested in serving on that TDA board. It may require some changes to the tenures, to the terms, staggered terms and whatnot, but wanted to see if we could get direction from council to move forward with bringing some revisions to that ordinance, which would provide for additional members to that TDA board.
So we want to look at 5 members. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. The staff is requesting council to expand the TDA committee to 5 members and revise the city's ordinances to reflect those changes.
All right, Mr. Huff?
And additionally, that they have to own a business in Mount Holly in order to be a part of it.
That would be one stipulation. The statutes speak to what is required from somebody on the TDA board. It has to be someone that is involved with tourism, and then I believe the statutes speak to someone that has an interest in business and tourism in the city of Mount Holly.
Just
I can
want to
get you that
clarify
information.
Yeah, okay.
Any other thoughts or comments? We need to take action on this?
I'll come back.
Come back on that,
Yes,
just
sir.
for information. All right. Number 6 on new business, the city manager report. Mr. Blanton.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. There is a lot of great and exciting things happening here in Mount Holly. I want to focus on what's going to be happening over the next 2 weeks before we come back together again. So I have several matters for the council and the public's attention tonight. Most excitedly, on Friday, we received word that the city had been awarded a Part F grant. That is a Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant to go towards the construction of the Ransom Hunter Park. We applied for this grant in the spring, and we were caught in a 3-way tie Friday afternoon as the Parks and Recreation Commission met, and they voted to award Mount Holly $374,227. This is going to be phenomenal addition in order to be able to bring that project into life, former Glendale Avenue property, which was recently renamed the Ransom Hunter property. So certainly appreciative to our friends in Raleigh that were agreeable to giving this funding, spoke to them today, and we're going to be moving forward with executing those documents and getting that back before council for more information in the upcoming days. So certainly looking forward to that. I did want to make note that we have a new intern that is working for the city of Mount Holly, Miss Priscilla Park. She's with us here tonight. She's working on her MPA at UNC Charlotte. She's going to be spending the semester with us, primarily in the planning department, so excited to have her on board. On that same note, tomorrow night we are going to be collaborating with the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, assisting them with their capstone project. There's going to be a group of graduate students that are working on completing their degree that they're going to be spending the semester with us, helping with some revisions to particular tenets of our personnel policy. It's my hope upon the completion of this project, we'll have them before the council to make a presentation and aid and assist them as they continue towards seeking their master's in public administration degree. Later this week at Muddy River, the Moncross Area Chamber of Commerce is going to be having a business after hours at Muddy River, so we are certainly glad to be able to showcase what is sure to be the showpiece of Gaston County, that being Muddy River, and having the business after hours event starting at 5:30 on Wednesday, August the 28th. City offices will be closed on Monday for Labor Day, so there will be no administrative offices that will be open. There will be no delay in any type of solid waste collection. Also, as I mentioned earlier, the YMCA is going to be having a groundbreaking this week. That's going to be September 5th at 4 p.m. Looking forward to joining our friends and partners at the Y as they break ground on over $14 million in capital improvements that will certainly be an asset for the city of Mount Holly. I did want to speak to some recent complaints that the city has received regarding dust on Highway 273. Last week, management met with the company in the area, National Gypsum. There are new washing mechanisms that are being installed. The company is aware of these problems. They are taking immediate actions to address these. The city is working with them in order to provide additional relief, providing additional resources to them that will be of help to them as they move forward. We were assured these would be only temporary in nature as they are installing some new truck washing stations there at Goldbaum National Gypsum. So certainly have heard the complaints, and we're certainly working towards addressing those complaints and ensuring that they are tended to in a timely manner. That is all that I have tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we're going to go into closed session pursuant to NCGS 143-318, 11A, 3 and 5, real estate acquisition and contract negotiations. I need a motion to go into closed session. Mr. Craig, second by Mr. Reeves. All in favor? We are now in closed session.